it's a good rule of thumb, guys. High-end clubs are doing them every 10 years just to always constantly have good greens. You know, like you just made the comment, Lone Palm in 40 years. Are their greens the best they can ever be now? No, probably not, but they're there, you know. If the superintendent is diligent and he does his job and he removes the 20%, he's prolonging that time until you have to rebuild. You know, I don't know what happened here. I have really, really scarce records when I got here. I mean, who knows if he was impacted 4% every time, or 8%, or, you know, there's a lot. When I got here, they didn't even pull a core. They just solid dime, which that's a whole nother seminar. The solid dimes don't remove anything. They're just moving things around. So, I hope I've answered your question. It all depends. There's a lot of variables that go into when you should rebuild. You know, I think we're, you know, a long way away from it. You know, if anything's going to drive us to rebuild any green out here, it's going to be from the earth that settles. And everybody that owns a home out here knows about settling. That settling can destroy drainage, can destroy irrigation, and destroy the structure of that green. So a settling issue would probably be the thing that drives us to an early reconstruction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, that brings me to the next question. Isn't there a period of time when you kind of settled out? I've been 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, what? Say that again.
Yeah, when it's settled.
Oh, is the ground done settling? Well, you know, that's a good question. You know, there's constantly things going on out there. Mr. Huff's over here, Dr. Huff's over here digging right now. I guarantee where he's digging, somewhere else is moving because he's making an area for slimes to move. Leonard has experienced this site prepping real estate lots back here. When you dig an area out, another area will move. And so as long as we're moving around and making construction, there's a chance that we could change something.
Never thought of it that way.
There's no telling. That's a whole other class of geology as far as settling out.
Bart, I've always thought of it like a bowl of jello. And you put a little bit of weight on this side and some moves, move it around a little bit and everything constantly.
Great.
Down to the golf course. We always interact with it. This is the nature of the way. It's the earth.
Yes, Earth. You know, you can't beat it. You just work around it.
I also had one. Speaking back to overseeding, sort of the bean counter in the back of the room, our maintenance budget has increased 40% since 2007, and that's eliminating overseeding. So I think the commitment on the drum, by the drumming company to this property, bringing Matt on board, it speaks volumes. The golf course, the product, it's absolutely amazing commitment of Mr. Drummond and that company, what they've done with this facility compared to where we were, end of 2007, beginning of 2008. We all remember well. We don't want to remember.
Yeah, well, that being said, they support us financially. We have to prove why we need it, and that's what we're doing. We're going to work hard every day to do this.
Thank God for coal, right, Leonard?
Thank God for coal.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. 2 years ago, you vacuumed the course and fairways, right? And did you experiment last year or a couple of years off?
We've never heard
But I'm just saying this because a couple of times you're like, you don't want to replace it with the same material. And I just want them to understand when you kind of drug and mowed the fairways, you were essentially breaking those cores up as small as you possibly could to get them back in there.
Well, and what happens when he asks about vacuuming, there's going to be a small percentage, well, about 20 to 30% of that material that's literally impossible to get back into that hole, So it's got to go somewhere.
Oh, because you're not compacting it as you put it down.
Right. We're not out there with our feet, trying to push it back in. There's core space.
They did that. Most of that stuff got attached to the bottom of Don White's golf cart.
Well,
And blow it off in front of the hair stand.
Yeah, blow off in front of the 19th hole.
Well, so we did go out with vacuums and we did pick that up. So, yes, sir.
You said you verified only impacting the green by 7%, 5%, 2%. Is that right?
7, 6, 7, 3, 6, 7, and 2.
Is nuisance still such an eyesore and a nuisance so that can be distributed?
So
still such an eyesore because it's so evenly distributed, the holes?
I mean, I don't know, when you say eyesore as a player, when you're standing over the top of it, or?
It's just
Or
the,
generally just looking at it?
Well, I mean, it's an eyesore because it's not perfect, you know?
well, plus you ripped up the green. And
But,
you put all these holes in it.
You get a million holes and you
Yeah.
fill them with bright white sand and you're staring at bright white sand instead of.
You're gonna see it as
green.
Right, it's just interesting to hear that many holes are in the ground, you know, it's only 2% of the green.
right, well, the 2% is the quad time.
It's the area.
Yeah.
So what you took all those holes and made one big hole, it's gonna take up 7%.
What it is you take the radius of a circle, right, which is this small time, you times it by how many thousands of holes are, in our case, how many holes are in a square foot, and then like he said, if you moved it all to one side, that's how much it would be. So there is a math equation. We can talk about that.
What's the average size of our greens?
Our average size green is 6,500 square feet. So we have 3 acres of greens out here. The largest green on the golf course being number 14, the smallest green being number 4. So,
How does that compare to other courses?
well, there it is.
Average.
I just went down to Stream Song 2 weeks ago with the new Mosaic project, and they're going to have 13,000 square foot greens on average. That's bigger than our putting. 13.
Where is this?
Stream
The
Song.
new Mosaic
Property.
golf course.
Oh, the new one out here. Oh, yeah.
But that's
Yeah, that's already been
Four
designed.
clubs from front to back.
oh, they're 30 days out from grass.
Yeah.
They're 30 days
They're
from
way
grass.
ahead on
Yeah.
construction.
What'd you say, 30
They're
days?
30 days out from grassing the dope course.
I mean, it's under construction.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought that was still a light green.
No. Fred, yes, sir.
Our Achilles heel over the years has been nematodes.
Yes.
I guess I don't touch any property.
No, you're right.
Does this process help reduce the likelihood that the nematodes are going to ruin these greens again? Or have you found material that has been made illegal over the years that you can treat it?
Well, what it is this process is like bodybuilding. We're pushing this plant to put on muscle, to make this to get tough, to be strong. Those nematodes eat roots, so we're pushing this plant and we're feeding those nematodes. But at the same time, we're trying to keep them at a threshold where the damage that they're causing, you're not seeing it on the surface. I see it because I'm pulling nematode assays, but yes, there are some chemicals out that we have been using. We've had some success with some, and we've had some not so good success with others. There's been a lot of chemicals pulled from the EPA. That's a whole other seminar as well. We've talked about that in depth in our Greens Committee. Nematodes are a microscopic segmented roundworm. Guys, I'm not trying to get crazy here. They feed on turf roots, and they are another problem that we fight here. Not only do we fight compaction and weather and Mother Nature, we fight insects and diseases and the whole shooting match.
A nematode is a bacteria, not an
No,
animal?
No.
it's a microscopic segmented roundworm. It's
It's an animal.
It's an ant.
Oh.
It's an animal in its simplest form.
It's a worm.
Only way to say it's not
The
microscope.
only way you can see it is in a microscope. There's nobody running around here saying, look at all the nematodes. You know?
Oh, so these birds, that's not what those birds are eating.
No, they're eating all sorts of other insects that eat turf, like field bugs and
Some
beetles.
feed externally, some feed internally.
Crickets, yeah, you got a whole cricket.
But you'll never see them, you won't, you just don't find them as take the same.
Bed bugs you can see, you can get a hold of. Is there any other questions? Mr. Silver?
Yeah, when you punch the greens, you chart it so that you're not punching starting at the same spot the next year and
Yep.
repunching the same hole.
I guess he wasn't here for the presentation.
Well, Matt went on and said that, you know, as we saw in the putting green picture, he was at a slightly different angle rather than right across the green.
Yeah.
What we try to do, believe it or not, this is going into a little more detail, is we try to move the lines on the green 8 degrees every year. So we move them 8 degrees, or not every year, every punch. And that way research has shown, there's guys that have researched this in depth at universities, that if you move 8 degrees, you're less likely to hit the same plug. But if a guy just went, for instance, on a clock, 6 to 12, 3 to 9, and he just changed every other time, right, you're going to be pulling out the same. So we move 8 degrees. That's why Matt punches the greens. You don't just see random guys out just getting out.